The station, called Hollow Point, floated between two unimportant stars, far from trade lanes and far from trouble. That was the idea, at least. It was the kind of place where nothing happened, and when something did, people wished it hadn't. Ethan Cross had been assigned there for 3 years. He was human, which already placed him low on the galactic ladder. Humanity had joined the wider galaxy late, quietly, and without much to offer, except cooperation and paperwork. So humans were sent to places like Hollow Point, listening posts, observation hubs, places where boredom was considered a feature. Ethan's job was to watch data streams and file reports no one important would ever read. On most days, the most exciting thing was a sensor glitch or a supply drone arriving late. That day started the same way. The station lights were dimmed to a soft blue, and the wide observation window showed only stars and slow-moving dust clouds. Ethan sat at his console, sipping reheated coffee and scrolling through system logs. He was halfway through a routine check when the door behind him slid open. He didn't look up at first. "Morning," he said out of habit. There was no answer. Ethan turned around, already annoyed, then froze. The figure standing there was not human. She was small, shorter than Ethan by a full head, with pale silver skin that seemed to reflect the station lights instead of absorbing them. Her eyes were large and dark, almost too dark, with faint rings of light moving slowly inside them. She wore a simple garment, dark blue with no markings of rank or status. He recognized her species immediately. The Veilari. They were old, very old, one of the founding species of the Galactic Accord. They rarely interacted with humans directly, and when they did, it was always through officials or recorded messages. Ethan stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. Can I help you?" he asked, forcing his voice to stay calm. She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the edge of her sleeve. "I hope so," she said softly. Her voice was clear, almost musical, but there was tension under it. Fear. Ethan gestured to the chair across from his console. "You can sit, if you want." She did, carefully, like she was unsure the furniture would support her. Her eyes kept moving, checking the room, the door, the ceiling. "You're Ethan Cross," she said. "Yes, a human systems analyst. That's me." She nodded once, as if confirming something to herself.
"My name is Lyra," she said. "I am—"
"Not supposed to be here." Ethan let out a small, nervous laugh. "You'd be surprised how often people say that on this station." She did not smile. "I am serious," she said. "If they know I spoke to you, there will be consequences." That wiped the humor from his face. "Who is they?" Ethan asked. For a moment, she didn't answer. Her hands trembled slightly.
"My people," she said finally. "And others." Ethan leaned back against the console, choosing his words carefully.
"Lyra, if you're in danger, there are proper channels. Security. Diplomatic." "No," she interrupted, quickly. "I cannot go through them. That is why I chose you." "Me?" Ethan blinked. "Why me?" She looked at him, really looked at him, like she was seeing something important that no one else could. "Because you are human," she said. "And because no one watches humans closely." That stung more than he expected. Before he could respond, she leaned forward. "There is something you must understand first," she said. "What I am about to tell you is forbidden knowledge." Ethan's heart began to beat faster. "Forbidden how?" he asked. "Entire civilizations have been erased to keep it hidden," Lyra said. The words hung in the air between them.
Ethan swallowed. "Then you shouldn't tell me." "I know," she said.
"But I have run out of time." She took a slow breath, steadying herself. "For thousands of cycles," she began, The galaxy has believed that stability is the highest good.
That chaos must be crushed, contained, or destroyed. Ethan nodded slowly. This was standard galactic philosophy. My people, Lyra continued, were the first to truly master this idea. We learned how to prevent threats before they spread. She hesitated again. But there was one threat we did not understand. Ethan waited, not interrupting. We found it in the deep void, she said. Not on a planet, not in a star. It was a pattern, a self-developing structure that existed partly in physical space and partly outside it.
A life form? Ethan asked.
Yes, Lyra said. But not like any you know. Her eyes darkened.
It learns, she said. It adapts.
And it changes the rules of reality around it. Ethan felt a chill. What does it do? He asked. Lyra's voice dropped to almost a whisper. It breaks worlds. She explained that wherever the phenomenon appeared, physics became unstable, gravity twisted, time behaved strangely. Life either changed into something unrecognizable or simply ceased to exist. At first, we thought it was a weapon, she said. Then, a disease. Then, a natural disaster. And now? Ethan asked. Now we know it is responding, she said. To us! Ethan's mind raced. So, you fight it? We tried, she said. We failed. We tried to destroy it. It adapted. We tried to isolate it. It learned to spread. Her hands clenched into fists. So we chose containment. Ethan already didn't like where this was going. Containment how? He asked. Lyra did not answer immediately. When a system shows signs of infection, she said slowly, it is erased. Ethan stared at her. You mean evacuated? He asked. No, she said. The silence that followed was heavy. You destroy entire star systems, Ethan said. Yeah.
How many? She looked away. Enough that we stopped counting, she said.
Ethan felt sick. And no one knows? He asked. The galaxy knows stability, Lyra said, not the cost. She looked back at him, eyes shining. I am not supposed to feel this way, she said, but I cannot accept it anymore. Ethan rubbed his face with his hands. Why tell me? He asked again. What do you expect me to do? Nothing, she said softly. That is what I am afraid of. He frowned. That doesn't make sense. You are considered harmless, she said. Your species is new, weak. Your influence is minimal. Ouch. But you think differently, she continued. You do not start by asking how to destroy a problem.
You ask how it works.
Ethan looked at her, surprised. I've read human research, she said. Your early mistakes, your failures.
Your refusal to stop asking questions? She leaned closer.
If anyone can see what we missed, she said, it might be you. Ethan opened his mouth to respond. And the station alarms suddenly blared. Red lights flashed across the room. Lyra gasped and stood up. They know, she said. I stayed too long. Ethan's console lit up with security alerts. This is a routine drill, Ethan said, automatically, though his voice shook. Probably? Lyra shook her head. No, she said. This is a correction. The door at the far end of the room locked with a heavy sound. Lyra stepped back, fear clear on her face. If they find this conversation, she said, they will erase this station. Ethan's blood went cold. "You're telling me the truth?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "and that is why you must remember this." She reached out and pressed her fingers lightly against his temple. A sudden flood of images filled his mind. Stars collapsing, data patterns, impossible equations, worlds breaking apart silently. Then it stopped. Lyra staggered back. "I have given you enough," she said. "Too much, perhaps." "What about you?" Ethan asked urgently. She smiled sadly.
"I will be contained," she said. Before he could stop her, she turned and walked toward the emergency airlock at the side of the room.
"Lyra, wait!" Ethan shouted. She paused, just once. "Humans are dangerous," she said quietly. "Not because you destroy worlds, but because you believe they can be saved." Then she was gone. The alarms faded. The lights returned to normal. Moments later, Ethan's console displayed a single message. Incident resolved. No anomalies detected. Ethan stood alone in the silent room, heart pounding, mind burning with secrets that could destroy worlds. And somewhere deep in space, something ancient shifted, as if it had noticed him. The station lights shifted to night cycle, dim and calm, but his mind stayed loud. Every time he closed his eyes, the images returned. Broken stars, folding space, worlds coming apart without sound, not explosions, failures. Like reality itself had given up. He sat on his bunk, hands clasped, staring at the far wall. Lyra was gone. Officially, she had never been there. The station logs showed nothing unusual. No visitor, no alarms, no locked doors. Security footage showed Ethan alone at his console, working through routine tasks. Even the coffee cup he had been holding earlier was gone, replaced by a clean desk. It was perfect. Too perfect. Ethan understood then how deep the control went. This was not just secrecy. It was removal. Anything that did not fit was smoothed over, erased, forgotten, except his mind. They had not taken what Lyra gave him. Maybe they could not. Or maybe they did not think a human mattered. That thought burned. The next morning, Ethan reported to duty like nothing had happened. He nodded to passing crew, checked his messages, answered a few boring requests about data formatting. On the outside, he was the same quiet analyst he had always been. On the inside, he was terrified. Every system reading looked different now. Every anomaly felt like a warning. He caught himself staring at star charts, wondering which systems were already marked for destruction. At mid-cycle, his terminal chimed with a standard task request, a routine data cleanup from an old sensor array. Ethan accepted it without hesitation. The moment the file opened, his breath caught. The data structure was wrong. Not corrupted, not damaged, misaligned. The patterns reminded him of the images Lyra had pressed into his mind. Feedback loops, repeating structures that grew more complex the longer he looked. He checked the source. Deep Space Observation Buoy, inactive for decades. Officially useless. Ethan felt a slow, cold realization settle in his chest. Containment sites. They were watching the thing. And it was getting closer. He copied the file into a private workspace and disguised it as a training simulation. Then another, and another. He renamed variables, broke the data into harmless-looking pieces, and hid them inside approved traffic. By the end of the day, he had sent 3 packets toward Earth. He did not include explanations. He did not include warnings, just patterns. If humans were good at anything, it was curiosity. 2 days passed. Then 3. Ethan lived in constant tension, expecting security to appear at any moment. But nothing happened. No alarms, no corrections. The galaxy continued to ignore him. On the 4th day, a response came back. It was subtle, buried inside a routine update request. A single added note from a research team back home. This simulation is unstable. It appears to be reacting to observation. Please confirm source.
Ethan let out a shaky breath. They saw it.
He replied carefully, keeping his tone casual. Source unknown. Archive data, testing theoretical behavior only. The answer came faster this time. It behaves like a system with no boundary conditions. Are you sure this is theoretical? Ethan stared at the words. No boundary conditions. He remembered Lyra's voice. It changes the rules. Yes, he typed, but I think it shouldn't be treated as an enemy. There was a long pause. Then the reply arrived. Agreed. It looks more like a conversation gone wrong.
Ethan smiled for the first time in days.
That night, the dreams changed. Instead of destruction, he saw structure. The phenomenon was still vast and dangerous. But now, there were gaps. Places where patterns slowed, as if waiting. Listening. The next alert came, without warning. Station-wide priority signal. All personnel to remain in assigned sectors. Ethan's heart raced. This was it. He stood slowly, keeping his breathing steady. If they were coming for him, panic would only make things worse. The station speakers activated. Attention, a calm, emotionless voice said. A Velari containment vessel has entered the sector. This is a standard oversight procedure. Containment vessel. Lyra. Ethan's hands curled into fists. Minutes later, his console lit up with a direct channel request. Biolari encryption. High clearance. Oh. He hesitated, then accepted. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a tall Velari figure in formal robes. Their features were sharper than Lyra's, their eyes cold and controlled. Human analyst Ethan Cross, the figure said. You were in contact with an unauthorized Velari individual 4 cycles ago. Ethan met their gaze. Yes, he said. You did not report this interaction. No, he said. Explain. Ethan chose his words carefully. She asked questions. I answered. That is all. The Velari studied him. She violated containment protocol, they said. Such actions result in correction. What does correction mean? Ethan asked. The Velari paused, just long enough to be noticeable. She has been isolated, they said. Her knowledge secured. Ethan swallowed. Is she alive? Yes, the Velari said. For now. Relief and anger tangled in his chest. You shared classified data, the Velari continued. This is unacceptable. Ethan straightened. You erase star systems to keep a mistake hidden, he said quietly. But you're worried about data? The temperature in the room seemed to drop. You do not understand, the Velari said. I understand enough, Ethan replied.
You're afraid of losing control. The Velari's eyes narrowed. Humans should be careful, they said.
Your species exists because we allow it. Ethan did not look away. And you exist because you're afraid to ask for help, he said. Silence. Then the Velari ended the connection. The containment vessel remained in the sector for 12 hours. During that time, Ethan felt it again, a pressure in his mind, distant but aware, like something massive turning its attention toward the station. Not hostile, but curious. On Earth, the research teams worked without sleep. What Ethan had sent them did not behave like any known model. Every attempt to lock it into equations caused it to change. But when they allowed it to run freely, something strange happened. It stabilized. Not completely, but enough. They noticed that observation methods mattered. Aggressive probing caused instability. Passive interaction smoothed the patterns. One scientist wrote a note that made its way back to Ethan. It reacts badly to force. It responds better to structure. like a child pushing against walls to see where they are. Ethan closed his eyes. They were getting close. The Velari made their move on the 7th day. A system-wide announcement declared Hollow Point scheduled for decommission. All personnel were to be transferred. The station would be dismantled. Ethan knew what that meant. Erase the place. Erase the problem. He sent one last message to Earth, bypassing every safety rule he knew. They are going to shut this down. You need to act now. The reply came seconds later. We're ready. But this will reveal everything. Ethan looked out at the stars. Do it, he said. Across human space, systems woke up. Not weapons, not fleets, networks. Millions of small, harmless processes, all aligned around a shared framework. Not to attack, not to contain, to define boundaries. The phenomenon noticed immediately. Across the void, reality trembled, not in anger, but surprise. For the first time since its creation, it was not being pushed away or locked down. It was being spoken to. At Hollow Point, alarms began to scream as space twisted at the edge of sensors. The Velari containment vessel powered weapons that had not been used in centuries. Ethan stood at his console, hands steady. "This is what humans do," he whispered. "We don't win by breaking things." Somewhere, deep in the dark between stars, the impossible thing paused and listened. Far away in a quiet containment chamber, Lyra opened her eyes, and for the first time, she felt hope. Space around Hollow Point did not explode. That surprised everyone watching. The Velari containment vessel had powered its weapons. Human observers expected light, force, destruction. That was how the galaxy solved problems. Instead, space bent. Not violently, not suddenly. It was like water meeting a slow current. Ethan felt it before he saw it. A pressure behind his eyes, gentle but heavy, as if something vast had leaned closer to look at him. The station sensors screamed warnings, then quieted as their readings stopped making sense. Gravity shifted by fractions. Time markers drifted out of sync. And then, nothing broke. The phenomenon had arrived. The Velari commander appeared on Ethan's screen again, their calm finally cracking. "What have you done?" they demanded. Ethan swallowed, but his voice stayed steady. "We talked." "That is impossible," the Velari said.
"It does not communicate. You never let it," Ethan replied. The commander turned slightly, listening to unseen advisors.
Their eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "The instability is decreasing," they said. "That should not be happening. On Earth, human systems strained under the load. The network was vast, billions of small processes, each insignificant alone. Together they formed something new. Not a mind. Not a weapon. A framework. The phenomenon brushed against it like a hand against a wall. It pushed. The wall held. Not rigid. Not rigid. Not rigid. Not cruel. Defined. For the first time, the phenomenon encountered limits that did not hurt. It adjusted. At Hollow Point, the alarms fell silent. Ethan slumped into his chair, breath shaking. "It's working," he whispered. The Velari commander stared at the data. "No," they said slowly. "It should not, but it was." Across nearby systems, long-dormant containment zones stabilized. Stars stopped fluctuating. Planets marked for future erasure no longer showed warning signs. Centuries of fear were being undone in minutes. The Velari fleet did not know what to do. Their doctrine had no response for this. "Human," the commander said, voice low. "Shut this down!" Now, Ethan looked at the stars outside the window. Somewhere out there was Lyra, locked away because she had dared to hope. No, he said. This is not a request, the Valeri snapped. Ethan met their gaze. Neither was erasing those worlds. The channel cut. Moments later, the containment vessel began charging its weapons again. On Earth, the warning arrived instantly. They're going to fire. Human leadership argued for less than 10 seconds. Then they made a decision that would change everything. They opened the network, not just to scientists, to everyone. Across human space, people felt it. An odd sensation, like standing near a storm that wasn't dangerous. Engineers, teachers, artists, children, no instructions, no commands, just presence. The framework expanded, not in power, but in depth. Human minds did not touch the phenomenon directly. They shaped the boundaries, reinforced meaning, added context. They did what humans had always done. They told stories. Patterns formed that were not mathematical alone. Cause and effect, action and response, choice and consequence. The phenomenon paused again. It had learned to react. Now it began to understand. At Hollow Point, space rippled between the station and the Valeri vessel. Weapons fire did not pass through. Energy dissolved harmlessly into defined paths that led nowhere. The Valeri commander staggered back. This violates every law of physics, they said.
Ethan shook his head. No, he said.
It just violates your assumptions. The Valeri fleet began to withdraw. Not in defeat, in fear. Hours passed. No one slept. The phenomenon remained, vast and quiet, like an ocean held back by shores that had not existed before. It did not spread. It did not attack. It stayed, waiting. On the 10th hour, a signal came from a containment facility far from Hollow Point. Lyra's location. Ethan's console chimed softly. A request, not encrypted, not hidden, open. He accepted it. Lyra appeared on the screen, pale but alive. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "You're still here?" she said. "So are you," Ethan replied, smiling weakly. "They tried to silence me," she said, "but something changed. All containment orders were paused." She hesitated.
What did you do? Ethan glanced at the stars. We stopped treating it like a monster. Lyra's breath caught.
"You made contact."
We listened first, Ethan said, her eyes filled with something close to disbelief.
"My people believed control was the only path," she said. "We never considered understanding." Ethan leaned closer to the screen. "Can you help us now?" "Yes," she said immediately. "I know how they think. I know where they will strike next, because they would strike." The galaxy could not accept this easily. Within days, emergency councils formed. Ancient species demanded explanations. Accusations flew. Humanity was called reckless, dangerous, irresponsible. The phrase existential threat was used often. Ethan was summoned, digitally at first, to answer questions no human had ever been asked before.
You risked the stability of the galaxy, one voice accused.
"You interfered with classified containment," said another. Ethan listened. Then he spoke. "You were already destroying yourselves," he said simply. "You just called it order." The silence that followed was heavy. Data poured in from across the stars. Systems once doomed were recovering. The phenomenon was no longer accelerating. It was integrating, not gone, never harmless, but no longer uncontrollable. Lyra stood beside Ethan during the final council, no longer hidden. Her presence alone caused shockwaves. "She broke protocol," one elder said.
She broke silence, Lyra replied, and that saved us.
The Valeri elders could not deny the evidence. For the first time in their long history, they faced a truth they could not erase. They had been wrong. After the council ended, Ethan returned to Hollow Point. The station was no longer scheduled for destruction. Instead, it became something new. A meeting place, a listening post. Ethan stood by the observation window as Lyra joined him. "It's still out there," she said quietly. "Yes," Ethan said.
Doesn't that scare you?
He thought about it. "Yes," he admitted.
But fear isn't a plan.
Lyra smiled faintly. "That sounds very human." They watched the stars together. Somewhere beyond sight, the phenomenon shifted again. Not expanding, not retreating, learning. And for the first time since its creation, the galaxy was not preparing to destroy a world. It was preparing to understand one. The galaxy did not calm down. If anything, it became louder. News of what humans had done spread faster than any official message. Old species whispered in closed councils. Younger ones panicked. Traders rerouted ships away from human space. Military fleets began quiet movements, called defensive repositioning, though everyone knew what that really meant. Humanity had broken an unspoken rule. They had touched something ancient and survived. Worse, they had changed it. At Hollow Point, the station was busier than it had ever been. Ships arrived daily. Observers, scientists, diplomats, and soldiers from many species filled the halls. The station that once existed to be ignored was now impossible to overlook. Ethan walked through the corridors, feeling eyes on him. Some curious, some fearful, some angry. He did not enjoy the attention. He preferred problems he could study quietly. But the galaxy was no longer quiet, and neither was the problem. The phenomenon remained stable, but only just. The human framework held, but it was stretched thin. It required constant adjustment, constant care. Humans were good at that, but the rest of the galaxy did not trust it. Or them. Lyra joined Ethan in the central observation chamber. She looked tired, but determined. Since her release, she had spoken openly, refusing to hide again. "They are gathering fleets near 3 human systems," she said quietly. Ethan frowned. "Defense?"
No,
Lyra said.
Preparation. For what? Ethan asked, though he already knew.
"To force you to stop," she said. "Or to remove you." Ethan exhaled slowly. "They're afraid." "Yes," Lyra agreed. "And fear makes my people cruel." That word, coming from her, carried weight. Hours later, the warning came. A joint galactic force transmitted a declaration across open channels. Humanity is ordered to disengage from the anomaly immediately. Failure to comply will result in corrective action. Corrective action. Ethan clenched his jaw. Human leadership convened an emergency session. Ethan was invited, not as a commander or a politician, but as the one who had started this. He stood before the assembled leaders, feeling very small. "They're serious," one official said. "We can't fight the entire galaxy." Ethan nodded. "I know." "So what's the plan?" another asked. Ethan hesitated. "There isn't a clean one," he said, "but there is a right one." Silence followed. "If we shut the framework down," Ethan continued, "the phenomenon will destabilize. It won't go back to how it was. It will get worse." "And if we don't?" someone asked. "They'll attack," Ethan said simply. The room grew tense. Lyra stepped forward. She had been allowed to attend, though many were uncomfortable with her presence. "My people believe destruction is control," she said.
If you yield now, they will erase this lesson, and they will erase you later.
The words were harsh, but honest. A long discussion followed. fear, risk, survival. In the end, humanity made a choice that surprised even itself. They refused. The reply sent to the galactic force was calm and clear.
We will not disengage. We will not destroy what we are finally beginning to understand.
We invite dialogue. We reject violence. The response was immediate. You have been warned. At Hollow Point, sensors detected fleet movements. Not 1 or 2 ships. Hundreds. From multiple species. The galaxy was preparing to teach humanity a lesson. Ethan stood at his console, hands steady despite the knot in his chest. Lyra stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the stars.
They're coming, she said.
Yes, Ethan replied. Are you afraid? She asked. He thought for a moment. Yes, he said. But I'm more afraid of what happens if we stop. The first shots did not come from human space. They came from the galaxy. Energy beams lanced toward the region where the phenomenon existed. Not aimed at ships. Aimed at reality itself. The effect was immediate and terrible. The phenomenon reacted sharply. Space warped. Time jittered. The human framework strained as boundaries were pushed too hard, too fast. Alarms blared across every connected system. On Earth, people felt it like a sudden pressure in their minds. The network wavered. Ethan shouted commands not to weapons but to systems.
Stabilize! Spread the load! Human networks adjusted, rerouted, reinforced.
Millions of minds did not panic. They adapted. They always had. The phenomenon slowed its reaction. Not calm, but listening. The attacking fleets hesitated. Their weapons were doing nothing except making the problem worse.
This is your fault,
A galactic commander transmitted angrily.
you are provoking it.
Ethan responded without hesitation. You're hurting it, he said. And it's hurting back. You expect us to believe it's alive? The commander snapped. Yes, Ethan said. Because you're acting like it is. A pause, then another volley of fire. This time, something changed. The phenomenon did not resist. It redirected. The energy did not explode. It flowed, bent along defined paths, dispersing harmlessly into space. The attacking fleets watched their most powerful weapons become meaningless. Fear rippled through their ranks. Lyra closed her eyes. It's learning faster now. Ethan nodded. Because it has context. The galaxy realized something in that moment. They were no longer dealing with an uncontrollable force. They were dealing with a system shaped by humans that terrified them more than any weapon. An ultimatum followed. Disengage or be declared a hostile species. Human leadership did not respond immediately. Instead, Ethan did something unexpected. He opened the network again. This time, to the galaxy. Not the framework itself, but the idea behind it. Models, observations, mistakes, failures. Everything humanity had learned. No secrets, no control, just information. Lyra watched the transmission spread.
You're giving them everything, she said.
Yes, Ethan said, because hiding got us here. Some species ignored it, some rejected it, but some watched. Scientists, thinkers, younger races who had always lived under the shadow of the old powers. They saw the truth. The phenomenon was not a god or a demon. It was a consequence. Of curiosity without care. Of power without understanding. As more minds joined the observation, not attacking, not controlling, the phenomenon stabilized further. The galaxy's fleets found themselves facing a reality they could no longer dominate. Their weapons were useless, their authority questioned, and their oldest fear exposed. That control was not the same as wisdom. At Hollow Point, the battle that was never meant to be fought slowly ended. Fleets pulled back, not defeated, but uncertain. A final message came from the Vealari elders. "We will convene a full conclave," they said.
All species, all records.
Ethan leaned back, exhausted.
They're not happy,
Lyra said. "No," Ethan replied, "but they're listening." She smiled faintly. "You changed them." "We changed ourselves first," Ethan said. Outside the station, the stars shone steadily. The phenomenon remained, vast and quiet, no longer a threat held at bay by fear, but a challenge held in balance by effort. The galaxy had tried to crush humanity. Instead, it had been forced to face something far more dangerous. A species that refused to destroy what it did not yet understand. And that scared them more than any world-ending force ever could. The galaxy changed slowly, not in explosions, not in grand announcements. It changed in silence, in long meetings, in records that were opened for the first time in thousands of cycles. What humanity had forced was not peace, but honesty. And that was harder to accept. The full conclave gathered near Hollow Point. Not on a planet. Not on a station owned by any one species. A neutral construct was built in open space, shaped by shared effort. Even that was new. Ethan arrived feeling tired in a way sleep could not fix. He had not been a hero. He had not wanted to lead anything. He had only refused to forget what Lyra had trusted him with. Lyra walked beside him, no longer guarded, no longer hidden. Many eyes followed her, some with respect, some with shame. Inside the conclave chamber, representatives of dozens of species waited. Ancient beings who had guided the galaxy for ages. Younger ones who had lived under their decisions. And humans, still few, still small, but no longer invisible. The Vealari elder spoke first.
For millennia, one said, we believed control was survival. We believed secrecy was mercy.
Their gaze moved to Lyra. We were wrong. A ripple of reaction moved through the chamber. Ethan felt a weight lift from his chest. Just a little. They did not argue the evidence anymore. The data was too clear. Worlds once doomed were stable. The phenomenon no longer expanded. The cost of containment, entire erased systems, could no longer be justified. What is it, then? A delegate asked. If not an enemy. Ethan stood when called upon. His voice was quiet, but steady. It's a response, he said, to intelligence without responsibility, to power without limits.
Some did not like that answer.
So it's our fault? Another voice demanded. Yes, Ethan said simply. The silence that followed was long. Lyra spoke next. My people created the first breach, she said, but many of you benefited from what followed. You chose not to ask questions as long as the danger stayed far away. That hurt more than accusation, because it was true. The conclave lasted for days. Arguments rose and fell. Old pride clashed with new fear. But something had changed. The phenomenon was no longer a hidden threat they could pretend did not exist. It was part of their shared reality, and humans had proven something dangerous. That understanding could work where destruction failed. In the end, a decision was reached. Containment would end, not recklessly, not immediately, but permanently. A new council was formed, shared, transparent, no single species in control. Humanity was given a seat, not because they demanded it, but because no one could justify excluding them anymore. The phenomenon would be monitored, not imprisoned, studied, not attacked, and never again erased through silence. When the conclave ended, Ethan returned to Hollow Point one last time. The station would not remain a station. It would become a hub, a place where species came to learn how badly things could go, and how they might still be fixed. Ethan stood by the observation window, watching the phenomenon far away. It was still vast, still dangerous, still something that demanded care. Lyra joined him. "You're quiet," she said.
"I'm tired," Ethan replied, "and a little scared." "Of what?" she asked.
"That this only works as long as we keep trying," he said. Lyra smiled softly.
"That is true of everything worth saving." She looked out at the stars. "My people are struggling," she admitted.
"We built our identity on being in control.
"And now?" Ethan asked. "Now we must learn to live with responsibility instead," she said.
That is harder."
Ethan nodded.
"Humans are still learning that too."
A message arrived on Ethan's console. From Earth. The network was still active, but it was no longer straining. The shared framework had become easier to maintain, as more species adopted parts of it. Not the human way exactly, but inspired by it. The phenomenon responded well to diversity. It always had. In distant systems, life returned to places once marked for erasure. Slowly. Carefully, but alive. Lyra turned to Ethan. "You never asked me why I trusted you," she said.
He thought about it. "I think I know. Tell me," she said.
You were taught to carry secrets alone, he said. And humans are bad at that.
"We share, even when we shouldn't."
She laughed softly. "Yes."
"And you listen, even when it hurts." They stood together in silence. Far away, the phenomenon shifted again. Not growing, not shrinking, adapting, it had learned boundaries. So had the galaxy. Years later, children, human and alien, would study this moment, not as a war, but as a turning point. The time when the galaxy learned that the most dangerous species was not the strongest, the oldest, or the most advanced. It was the one that refused to accept that destruction was the only answer. Ethan Cross would not be remembered as a conqueror. He would be remembered as someone who listened, and Lyra would be remembered not as a traitor, but as the one who broke silence when silence was killing worlds. The galaxy did not become perfect. Mistakes still happened. Fear still returned. But one truth remained, written into shared memory so it could never be erased again. Humanity did not save the galaxy by destroying its greatest threat. They saved it by refusing to look away, and in doing so, they taught the stars a lesson they would never forget.